Ravi, thank you for joining us. Today we're talking about plots in Bangalore. What is the plots market like? What do you think? Who's buying today?
In a way, Bangalore's always been a bungalow market, because apartment culture is relatively new in that sense. And when I say new, it's about maybe just 20 years old. Plotted is something that no developer consciously ventured into because, in a way, it was low value addition and at the same time low on execution. Really, they wouldn't really bring too much to the table as a developer. So most of them focused on apartments or high rises. This plotted development was a space that the Bangalore Development Authority was addressing, primarily by way of acquisition. So we've had many sort of layouts, be it Arkavati layout, Shivram Karant layout, many such layouts that the government was forming.
That was also about 20 years ago?
That also was about 20 years ago, but many of them got mired in litigations from farmers whose land was getting acquired at lower cost and then being sold at much higher value. So that's when we really saw that plotted development as a concept was not really going forward. This is when I think some developers, people like us who own large parcels of land, saw a lot of value in getting into plotted development because there was an inherent demand. Land was owned by us. From our perspective, monetizing land was far faster and easier. And that is how, this plotted development is, I think, the demand is again really sort of picked up over the last, maybe I would say 3 to 4 years.
Ravi, when we talk about plots, who's buying today?
I would say that it's a mix of end users. I wouldn't say these are speculative buyers really, but some of these are people who are buying with a bit of future in mind. It could be that they're buying for their children. It could be an investment sort of a tool, because it's lower maintenance. Compared to apartments where you need to find a tenant, and if you don't find somebody to rent, you have to pay maintenance and things like that. Plotted is a lot lower on maintenance. So these are mostly, I would say, end users, local Bangaloreans. Some of them, of course, from Bangalore being an IT hub, many of them are from the software industry. Businessmen, who want to sort of make park a small amount of money in real estate. So primarily, these are people that who are buying plots.
But this would not be with borrowed money, right? This would be self-generated.
A large part of it is self-generated. But having said that, many of these banks have also come up with schemes, wherein they are funding up to about 75. In fact, right up to about a year back before this NBFC crisis happened, we've heard of banks even funding up to 90% of the plot value. But how they would really fund it is that it was a mixture of the plot as well as the house on it. So if you intended to build the house on the plot, they would finance it as a package, So it wasn't just the plot, but it was really the house in that sense. So, but yes, there was financing that was happening.
How long should a person hold a plot?
See, one of the things that we need to keep in mind is that many of these plotted developments are a little bit away from the city because obviously land values are very high. If the location is very prime in nature, then it's possibly better suited for an apartment project. So these are, I would say, slightly outside, the periphery of the city. So my sense is that a time frame that would be ideal to look for would be somewhere around 3 to 5 years. So if you're not in a hurry to build a house immediately, but you're looking at maybe a 3 to 5 year horizon, maybe buying it for your children, as I mentioned, then I think it's a good investment.
And in 5 years, is it ready to start constructing, or do values also go up?
No, I would say that it would be ready to start constructing as maybe 9 months time from launch. Because like I mentioned, it is low on execution. So these projects typically get completed far quicker. The 3 to 5 year time frame is really from a social infrastructure perspective to make it more livable. Because if eventually I'm going to build a house and live over there, I'd like to have good amount of neighbors from a security perspective, schools, colleges, maybe even a workplace close by, hospitals, So these are things that would, in my mind, take a 3 to 5 year time frame.
When somebody looks for a plot, what are the 3-4 things that he should keep in mind?
Well, as in case of any real estate, I think its location is the primary thing that you need to keep in mind. And when I say location, it means the access road, distance from the city. Having said it's in the periphery, you don't want to buy something which is way off and, then the horizon maybe becomes a 10, 15 year horizon, It's too risky. So access road, closeness to the city, some amount of social infrastructure around there. What are the developments are coming in the vicinity? It could be like maybe a district, a collector's office, so things like these. These are things that you should sort of look for to sort of gauge how soon the development will sort of catch up with this location.
Does new infrastructure drive plotted demand?
Of course, I mean, infrastructure is always good news from any sort of real estate in that sense. Having said that, I mean, if obviously the metro is already reaching these lands, I mean, then these lands would be very prime in nature and, like I mentioned, maybe more suitable for a high-rise development, But infrastructure in terms of maybe the current access road as well as future roads. I mean, if it's marked in the development plan to be a wider, maybe 100 feet road, then you can be rest assured that in 3 years' time, maybe this road will come. And along with that, there will be a certain amount of development.
And what are the risks involved when you buy land?
Well, if you buy land from a reputed developer, pretty much there is no risk, I would see. Of course, today there is RERA also to protect the customers, which means that the plots are sanctioned, home loans are approved, so really not that much risk from that perspective. Of course, whether it is, the property is fully compounded from a security perspective. Of course, as I mentioned, if it is from a reputed developer, these are things that would typically check the boxes. One of the things that the buyers need to be wary of while buying the plot is that if it is not from a reputed developer, and this has happened in the past, many fly-by-night operators buy a piece of land and they call it revenue sites, which means it's actually not gone through a process of conversion. There's no official sanction. So these are sites which in my mind are risky because, tomorrow the government could come and declare that these sites are not legal. Also, if it's not converted, then if you're not an agriculturalist, you cannot own these plots, and there could be multiple sort of, there could be claims from the previous landowners, so then you're exposing yourself to multiple levels of risk, which is not prudent in my mind.
So then you should look for an A Khata property.
Well, that is where these terminologies have come, because the sites are not regular, it's not necessarily an A Khata, but people get a B Khata, now there's also some talk of Akrama Sakrama where they're regularizing some of these plots. But having said that, from a buyer perspective, I think it's way too much headache, really, to deal with it. It may be a little bit cheaper than what the regular sites are, but in my mind, from a peace of mind perspective, it's better to buy something which has all the approvals. Having said that, I think with RERA having come in, many of these developments also I think are no more taking place. It's something that used to happen in the past.
Do you also see that people who had thought of plots earlier have now started shifting to apartment culture, or people who were looking for apartments have now started shifting to plots? Is there a change in the mindset of the consumer?
My view is that most people, at least in Bangalore, would love a plot. People like the bungalow. But mere affordability has got them to move from a bungalow. Even areas like Indiranagar, Sadashivnagar, which were traditionally plots, have now been changed or converted to maybe 3-4 story apartment complexes, and people have moved in there. So I think it's not necessarily out of choice, but primarily from affordability perspective that this migration has happened. At the same time, there are a few people who want to move away from the urban chaos, and want to prefer to get a plot which could be a weekend home. Maybe you do some amount of planting over there. So there is a bit vice versa in the sense that there is, I said, like from an affordability perspective, people are compelled to move into an apartment. At the same time, people want to sort of move away from the, the hustle and bustle of the city and maybe move outside to a plotted, sort of a development.
So are you seeing a lot of people looking at plots as a second home?
Absolutely. Many of them, like I mentioned, may not be an immediate sort of a need to build a house there, but many of them are exploring it from either as a retirement home or as a weekend getaway, maybe build a smaller cottage there, do some farming like I mentioned, sort of enjoy the clubhouse there, so these are things that we sort of see that happening.
But today's plot buyers are not a first time buyer.
Definitely not. These are definitely not first time. I don't think it's their first investment in real estate, let me put it that way. These are people who already own a home, maybe an apartment, maybe an ancestral home, looking to buy this as an investment.
And what are the sizes that are most in demand?
See, the most popular sizes are 30 square foot by 30 feet by 40 feet, which is about 1,200 square foot. The next best would be a 60 by 40, which is about 2,400 square feet. Having said that, based on the size of the overall development, there will be odd shaped sites. There will be sites in the 30 to 50 dimension, even sometimes a bigger dimension, 80 by 50, 40 by 100. These would be in slightly more exclusive developments in that sense, the larger plots. But the most popular ones are 1,200 square feet to 2,400 square feet.
And those typically are easier when it comes to resale, right?
Yes, the ticket sizes are smaller, so these are normally a lot easier to sell and the demand is higher for these plots.
What is that ticket size, that sweet spot in the ticket size?
In my mind, it would be roughly, I mean, for a good plotted development, the price per square foot would vary between 1,800 to maybe 3,000 square feet. So this would mean that the plot would really be about around 25 lakhs to maybe 45 to 50 lakhs. This is a sweet spot, I would say, in my mind.
Which areas do you predict to be the hotspots as far as plots are concerned in the city?
So like I mentioned, I mean, anywhere which is in the periphery of the city is a hotspot, you know. There were a lot of plotted developments that came up on the Sarjapur side, around the Attibele sort of, Attibele Anikel Road. We've seen a fair amount of plotted developments in that location. Now, of course, I mean, North Bangalore is something which is really booming, and we see a lot of plotted developments coming in the north of Bangalore, which means that it's slightly further away from the airport or in the vicinity of the airport.
And these are the spots that you think has the potential to pick up?
Absolutely. I mean, reason being that I think although it is further away from the airport, I mean, the distance from the airport would still be in the range of maybe 6 to 8 kilometers. And like I mentioned, it's important to see what are these sort of infrastructure developments that are close to these sites. Like I mentioned, it could be a DC office, it could be a taluk office, So airport obviously is a big sort of infrastructure spot in that sense, So I foresee that a lot of plotted development will come in and around this area.
See, Ravi, in the last 3-4 years, we've seen a significant slowdown in markets around the country, real estate markets. How has that impacted the plots market?
To be honest, I mean, we have a fair amount of plotted developments ongoing, as you're aware. And we've seen the cycle right through demonetization, GST, RERA, wherein apartments have taken a bit of a beating. The apartments on the higher end have obviously, I mean, continued to be sort of slow. Plotted has surprisingly been in very, very good demand. I mean, we've seen that the plotted demand has not really sort of slowed down.
You expect this demand to continue?
I foresee that this continue because, to be honest, I mean, the supply also is not as many, Even today, not many of the big developers are looking at plotted developments in its true sense. Because like I mentioned, I mean, people like us who own land, I mean, we're at least unlocking the land value. But from a developer perspective, it's very little value addition, and I think from their perspective, it's too much effort for too little. And we don't see too many of them really venturing into this space.
So does it keep the developer going in a slowing market? Is that why plots are sold by developers?
Yes. So many of them have sort of gotten there because apartments, since the demand is slow, while they may have initially bought the land from a perspective to build apartments, I think they've sort of reevaluated their plans and moved to a plotted development because the sales are faster there,
Ravi, is it also true that many consumers who bought, say, affordable houses went for ticket sizes, and then when the house was actually built in the last 3-4 years, suddenly they realized that the amount of living space has shrunk, and we've seen this around the world actually.
Sure.
The living areas shrinking.
Sure.
Is that one reason why people are being driven to plots?
No, I don't think that really is the reason. I think it's a mindset change really, For example, I mean, Bangalore, we've always had the luxury of larger spaces, So even if it's a 2-bedroom apartment, it would still be a 1,200 square foot carpet, If a 3-bedroom would be anywhere between 1,800 and 2,000 square foot carpet. Whereas, I mean, if you go to a Mumbai, you will see high-end apartments which are possibly much smaller, I think it's a bit of a mindset change and not really something that's driving people to move to a plotted. I don't think that a plotted is really a substitute for an apartment in that sense, because most times people are buying apartments either to live there, and plotted, like I mentioned, is maybe a little bit futuristic in that sense.
Thank you so much, Ravi.
Thank you for having me.